Good evening, everybody. Yesterday, Delphine from the Mondaneum told me, you can give your speech in English or in French, or, Of course, I'm going to use English to welcome our dear friends from Finland and from Google. As deputy mayor of the town in charge of tourism and culture, it's a great pleasure to do that. But tell me, do you know the first thing to do when you arrive in Mons? To pet the monkey's head, of course. You know the monkey sitting just in front of the town hall? Yes, to pet the monkey's head will bring you just a year of happiness. And I would like to tell you that because you have to do it to try it, of course. But first of all, I'd like to tell you how much I'm happy to see you here for an important debate about creativity and the link between culture and economy, culture and technology. For Mons, the cultural and creative industries have really key perspectives, and I just want to insist on 3 topics. First, we were in Marseille 2 weeks ago with 10 startups from Mons and from the Digital Innovation Valley. Those starters, Jellycube, iMovix, BHC, Fishing Cactus, Dragonslide, are specialized, in serious gaming, advert gaming, slow motion for broadcasting, web agency, and so on and so on. And they had the opportunity to meet French companies from the digital economy, and it was really interesting to see and to realize the high level of their activities and the fact that it's possible to build successful partnerships with French companies from Marseille. Then, I know most of you had a guided tour of our current exhibition about Andy Warhol, Life, Death and Beauty. This exhibition is a huge success. 40,000 visitors in less than 2 months. For a town like Mons, it's just crazy. And of course, it contributes to the economic growth of the town. Because all those people, are having a drink in our cafes on Main Square, are shopping in town, and so it's just a great big test before Mons 2050. And the exhibition about Vincent van Gogh, I know, will be a huge success too for Mons 2015, and for us it was really important to have that kind of test before. And finally, I'd like to insist on the impact of Google, Mondaneum, the University of Mons, of course, Technocité, la Maison de l'Entreprise, all those partners around the table, because they are managing, I'm sure, structural change for our region, and it's really important for us, for the citizens, and also for our social economic growth. So, okay, I hope you will enjoy your stay in Mons. So many beautiful things to see in Mons. Our big church, Saint-Vaudru, or our belfry, or Museum Duisberg. But I hope you will have good work all day and fun all night long. So, welcome in Mons, welcome in town.
So, hello, welcome. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to this evening of discussions and thoughts about culture and creative economy, culture and creative industries. I'm just trying to, when I thought of how I would introduce this evening, I just remembered that the word itself, culture and creative industries, is not that old, actually. I found in Wikipedia that the word appeared in the early 2000. Although the definition of cultural and creative economy and industries is not very well accepted everywhere, you can see on this slide a list of areas to which it is related, with several circles, like the arts circle first, and then the cultural circle then, and then much later all the circles of industries that are related to a wider sense to cultural and creative economy. Well, in 2009, I found this nice map of Europe from 2009 showing the amount of employment or the economic growth in this area per regions. And, amazingly, the area of the Wallonia, actually, in 2009, I don't know if you can see it on the slide from there, but it's in gray, so it's not very active in terms of cultural and creative economy. I had put pointers, but they don't appear for some reason. I'm sorry about that. The area here, I'll show you with the mouse. Here. There is Hamina. So this is the area where Google established its other Google data center in Europe. There are two right now, one in Mons and one in the Hamina region. This region is just in the dark gray area, so it looks like cultural and creative economy was, at least already in 2009, much more active in this area. The idea of pushing forward creative economy percolated at the European level in 2010, thanks to this EC Grain paper called Unlocking the Potential of Cultural and Creative Industries, which was used as a main force driving the idea of better integration of CCIs in Europe's 2020 strategy. In this paper, things are mentioned. I took some excerpts from the paper. It says something like, CCIs represent highly innovative companies with a great economic potential and are one of Europe's most dynamic sectors. It also says, through partnership with education, CCIs can also play a major role in equipping European citizens with the creative, entrepreneurial, and intercultural skills they need. And this is exactly what we're discussing today. Now, in Wallonia, we know that a bit earlier than 2010, things emerged. For example, with the initiative of the Cabinet Marcourt, Creative Wallonia, in 2010, which recently became Wallonia Creative District at the European level. And then the Twist industrial cluster for image, sound, and text appeared at about the same time. Mons, of course, we've been working on Mons European Capital of Culture as early as 2004 with this motto, where culture meets technology. And I'm very happy that at the University of Mons we also worked on this area as early as 2007 when we created the Numidiat Institute for Creative Technology. So today we will have 4 speakers telling us how they feel about cultural and creative industries. 2 from Belgium, 2 from Finland. We will first welcome Dr. Melanie Volral, who works for the corporate governance and entrepreneurship at Mons, telling us about arts, culture, economics, an evolving field of research. Then we have Professor Cardwell from University of Aalto University, telling us about the entrepreneurship and startup ecosystem in Finland. Pascal Keiser from Technocité, telling us about Mons 2015, Where Technology Meets Culture. And then the last speaker will be replaced by Jouni from Cursor, from Finland, telling us about the economic situation in the Kotka-Hamina region and Google's impact on the structural change process. I was told to remind you that you shouldn't hesitate to use Twitter on the Creative Mons hashtag. Okay, thank you. I now leave the ground to our speakers, and I will be back for questions at the end.
Donc, bonjour à tous, je vais vous présenter l'étude en cours d'Alain Finet qui cherche à examiner les retombées de Mons 2015 sur le développement économique local et plus particulièrement les industries culturelles et créatives. En guise d'introduction, les activités culturelles constituent un secteur économique à part entière avec son offre, sa demande, ses performances, ses emplois et ses prix. Le développement de ce secteur constitue un levier fort dans les politiques de renouvellement urbain et économique, et ce, notamment dans une logique de développement durable. À ce titre, la culture est un puissant levier d'intégration sociale pour les individus. En ce sens, les industries culturelles et créatives constituent donc un levier de redéploiement territorial, tant sur le plan économique que sur le plan de la cohésion sociale. Dans cette optique, l'allocation budgétaire de 78 millions d'euros dédicacée à la culture au sein de l'arrondissement montois va permettre d'une part la dynamisation de la filière culturelle et créative montoise, notamment via une amélioration de l'image de marque, et d'autre part une redynamisation et une réorientation de l'ensemble de la structure économique territoriale par effet d'entraînement, l'idée étant que les dépenses culturelles vont générer plus qu'uniquement du développement culturel. Alors, au niveau des buts de l'étude, si l'idée de Mons 2015, capitale culturelle européenne, est que le développement socio-économique d'un arrondissement peut être assuré par un positionnement fort sur la culture, se pose donc la question de la mesure des effets engendrés par cette nouvelle orientation économique pour le développement territorial. Le but de l'étude d'Alain Finet est ainsi d'analyser la mesure avec laquelle le développement d'infrastructures culturelles impacte le développement économique local, une attention toute particulière étant accordée au processus de création d'emplois et de création de valeur au sein des entités économiques pouvant être directement ou indirectement impactées par l'organisation d'événements culturels liés à Mons 2015. Pour ce faire, 3 rapports seront réalisés. Un premier en 2012, c'est celui que je vous présente aujourd'hui. Ce rapport avait pour vocation de réaliser un cadastre des acteurs économiques en présence, susceptibles d'être impactés. Un deuxième rapport sera effectué en 2015, afin d'appréhender l'effervescence économique due à l'organisation des événements culturels. Et enfin, un dernier rapport sera effectué en 2016 pour quantifier les retombées économiques après l'événement, donc Mons 2015. Alors, les retombées peuvent donc être directes ou indirectes. Directes, forcément, au sens où elles impactent directement le processus de création.
They have an impact on the value creation and the job creation, but the fallouts can also be indirect, as other sectors will be impacted because there will be an increased demand. The induced fallouts come from the revenues generated and distributed amongst players. The purchasing power of households could increase as well, and this will have a positive impact as well. From a methodological standpoint, the idea was to study many years, 2012, to take stock of the situation, to study the various areas that could be impacted by the organization of cultural events. The idea was to set up a mapping of the various players, to analyze their performance levels, social level, but also economic level. In order to pinpoint industrial and creative industries, Alain Finet studied literature, but there is no uniform definition of an industrial and creative industry, in spite of the efforts made over the last few years. In order to identify these industries, Alain Finet decided to use a broad spectrum. Culture can be considered as the result of a creation process, but also as a production input for cultural products, movies, films, or design products, or fashion products. In his study, he made a distinction between direct and indirect fallouts. The sectors that would be directly impacted were also identified, as well as the ones that are indirectly impacted. First of all, the cultural core, the non-industrial services producing goods and services that can be consumed right away. For instance, a music concert, visual arts, painting, performing arts, and heritage, including musea. Still, in the sectors that are directly impacted, you have the industrial sectors producing goods and services that can be reproduced in order to be disseminated, such as a book, a movie, or a music recording. So you can include video games, broadcasting, music, and edition. And then, thirdly, for those sectors directly impacted, the creative sector. And in this creative sector, culture becomes an input in the production of non-cultural goods, design, architecture, or advertising. Then, the definition of those sectors that are indirectly impacted. This task was very difficult because there's no consensus on these indirect impacts. Here again, we had to identify the various sectors, and we used past studies. The following sectors are the ones that have an indirect impact: shops, stores, catering, hotels, renovation, cleaning, and the new information and communication technologies. The red thread in this study is to be found in a national accounting logic, as an essay code was given to each subsector belonging to a category that is impacted or that is not impacted. So, of course, it's sometimes difficult to reflect really the key activities of these companies. In order to consolidate the presentation of these sectors, Alain Finet used a wide range of social and economic indicators to analyze the social performance. The number of companies was analyzed and the number of employed persons. Alain Finet first used the Bell First database, including data provided by companies to the National Bank here in Belgium, but actually there was very little amount of information available. So for the employment chapter, number of companies and number of jobs, Alain Finet decided to use the National Office of Social Security. The data there was more accurate because they do collect data on the company's headquarters, whereas Bell First is not using the same database. So these were the social performance indicators. As to the economic indicators, Alain Finet took into account the turnover, the added value, net results, the level of own equities, and he paid attention to the number of companies that would have a negative equities, and then 3 ratios. The turnover on headcount, so the capacity of a company to sell from its equity, the added value on the assets, so the capacity for a company to generate income, and then the net result on the total amount of assets. And here the net result includes financial elements, outstanding elements, and elements related to the financial results. The objective of the study will be to repeat this analysis during several years. 2012, 3 years before Mons 2015, then in 2015 and in 2016. We will be able to relate to these indicators to see how they perform in time, and we will see to what extent the economic players in these regions have been able to progress. Before presenting the results, I think that it's important to highlight 2 limits of this study. First of all, we have also to take into account the economic situation, the positive or negative economic situation that has maybe nothing to do with the organization of Mons 2015. The second limit related to the timing and the impact on the economic development could be perceived in the mid-term after 2015. As to the results for 2012, and I'm talking here about the sectors that are directly impacted, you have here the representation sector by sector. In blue, we see that 91 companies listed by Belfast as part of the cultural hardcore. Out of these 91, only 12 had available data in Belfast, whereas 49 had data in the framework of the Belgian National Social Security System. So you see that we have more data by using the Social Security information. So 194 companies are considered by the Belgian Social Security System as being the companies that underwent a direct impact. 1,130 companies are directly impacted in terms of job creation, 50% in the hardcore in cultural industries. We can say that on the basis of these statistics, the cultural hardcore is the largest job providers here in this district. High levels of jobs were taken into account in the area of performing arts and the management of historic sites and monuments, the manège, the scientific park, and the Contemporary Art Museum. 3 conclusions from this study on the social performance. First of all, as an average, these are companies with an average of less than 5 persons per company or 6 persons per company. We know that some sub-sectors include a high number of employees. There is a difference between the hardcore of cultural companies and the creative industries and the other stores. This difference is due to the fact that these companies are not the same size, and their image is also maybe different. A third conclusion as to cultural industries and the hardcore companies include more or less 10 persons. These are micro companies, if we take into account the European definition of SME. As to the economic performance of creative and cultural industries, most of them are small-size companies. According to Bell First, it's difficult to have the turnover because under 50 employees, you are not obliged to publish your turnover. So we need to take into account the added value. For the hardcore, you see that the turnover is less than the added value, which is not possible, obviously, as you have to withdraw the costs related to your products. As to the hardcore, we see that the total added value amounts to more than 12 million euros. We have here the figures for the various ratios. They are positive. We see no negative situation, and we have also the figures for the creative industries and cultural industries. So what can we say for cultural and creative industries? The performance levels are quite good, and this is all the more true for the hardcore and cultural industries. Now, beyond this observation, figures show us that the cultural hardcore is really the driving force here in the region of Mons. So we did the same for those sectors that are indirectly impacted, social performance on the one hand and economic performance on the other. So just a reminder, cleaning, transport, catering, stores, shopping areas, as well as some information and communication technologies. A word on this sector which was not necessarily included in the previous studies, but it is an interesting one if we want really the region to be more developed. The Mons district wants to play a key role in the development of technological companies and wants to use culture to achieve this aim. So I think that we had to include these sectors as well. This sector that was indirectly impacted was included. As to the social performance, if we take into account the Belgian social security system data, 1,354 companies are impacted, 789, and more than 50% are considered to be other stores. Now, we see a high proportion in the catering sector. Both sectors account for 90% of the listed companies, but these are microstructures generating a limited number of jobs. As to the employment situation, the same general observation. We see here the percentage of jobs impacted. They come from these other sectors. As to the economic performance, indicators are less good than for the sectors directly impacted. We see here other economic players, those who have a high turnover and who create more jobs. So we have used the turnover figure. But if we take into account the size effect, we see that companies here are struggling as well. And we see this thanks to the various ratios. And the same goes for the other sectors. The transport sector is also struggling. Now, if we focus on the economic performance for the new information communication technologies, once again, if we take into account this profitability ratio, the last but one line, we see that the performance levels are positive, but there is a gap because these companies have a high capital, and so of all of the potentially impacted sectors, this is probably the one presenting the highest levels of economic performance. So to conclude, if we take into account the first study of 2012, Alain's study shows that the cultural and creative industries could play a major role, could really give more dynamism to the region. We should be able to put forward a cultural offer, provided cultural activities are really concentrated in already existing structures. We could also have a political instrumentalization, and we could also use peripheral players. This development scheme is based on the idea that the culture-related sector perform average, and they are much more sensitive than the other sectors. So we need to play on the cultural sector if we want this region to be more developed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melanie. Do you hear me? Oh, yes, okay, you do. Okay, so now we can switch to Professor Cardwell. William Cardwell is the head of the Aalto Center for Entrepreneurship in Aalto University. And he has, I guess, many things to tell us about entrepreneurship and the startup ecosystem in Finland.
Thank you. Oops, sorry. That looks good. Okay. So, yeah, let me just, it's great to see all of you here. And I'll try to speak as clearly as my southern USA accent can allow me. But just to clarify a few things. First, I was the co-founder of the Center for Entrepreneurship. I recently passed it over to my colleague, Tapio Seek. But anyway, what I'd like to tell you about today is some pretty interesting developments that have happened in Finland in the last, actually even the last few weeks. So this is pretty up-to-date stuff. And I'm gonna show you kind of the inspiration for what I think has been a dramatic change in the Finnish entrepreneurial ecosystem, and speak of it from the perspective of, I'm from the university, but from the perspective of there's a broader ecosystem that's making this happen. I give these credits in the beginning because in Finland, I think, as has been the history, we owe a lot to our students, actually. We have something called the Aalto University Entrepreneurship Society that started in 2010 when we founded the university. And they've really done huge things to change. And I'll motivate this a bit later. So first, I'm going to ask a question, a rhetorical question. Is the Finnish startup community broken through? And what I mean by this is have we seen Finland kind of move to a higher level in terms of productivity, economic value created by our startups? And the answer is, as always, we don't know. However, there's some pretty good evidence, and I'm going to show you a couple things, and then I'm going to get into the kind of